The Ashworth family's annual summer dinner was always an exercise in subtle cruelty, but this year they'd decided to abandon subtlety altogether. I watched my mother-in-law, Victoria Ashworth, delicately sip her wine while delivering another perfectly aimed barb. "Of course, dear," she said, eyeing my simple black dress. "Not everyone understands the responsibilities that come with our name. Some people," her gaze lingered meaningfully on me, "simply aren't bred for it. I'm Isabella Chen, though the Ashworths prefer to pretend my maiden name doesn't exist. To them, I'm just the unsuitable wife their youngest son Alexander chose instead of the socially acceptable debutante they'd picked out for him." "Mother," Alex warned, squeezing my hand under the table, "not tonight." "Oh, but we must discuss it," Victoria pressed on, encouraged by the nodding heads of various aunts and cousins around the massive dining table. "The Ashworth name has been prominent in Boston society for 200 years. We have certain standards to maintain." I took a slow sip of water, thinking about the encrypted email I'd received that morning from my private banking team. The merger had finally gone through, another technology company added to my quietly growing empire. The Ashworths, with their old money and social pretensions, had no idea that their common daughter-in-law was one of the wealthiest women in the country. "Perhaps," Victoria continued, warming to her theme, "it's time we discussed the prenuptial agreement again, to protect the family interests." Alex stiffened beside me. "We've been married for 2 years, Mother. That ship has sailed. It's never too late to protect oneself from unfortunate choices." I caught my father-in-law, Richard Ashworth, studying me with something close to pity. He'd always been the quieter partner in Victoria's social machinations, though no less convinced of the family's superiority. "Victoria," he said softly, "perhaps this isn't the best time." "No, Richard, it needs to be said. The girl clearly married Alexander for our money and position. We must take steps." I couldn't help but laugh, earning sharp looks from around the table. The Ashworth fortune, while respectable, was barely a rounding error compared to my net worth. Not that they knew that, yet. "Something amusing, dear?" Victoria's voice could have frozen champagne. "Just appreciating the irony," I replied carefully. Alex and I had discussed when and how to reveal my true financial status. Looked like the time had chosen itself. "Irony?" Victoria's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose. "What would someone like you know about irony?" "Someone like me?" I smiled, reaching for my phone. "You mean someone who graduated summa cum laude from MIT? Someone who filed their first technology patent at 19? Or someone who founded one of the most successful private technology companies in the world?" The dining room went very quiet. Even the servants hovering near the walls seemed to hold their breath. "What are you talking about?" Victoria demanded. "You work in computers or something?" "Something like that," I agreed, pulling up my private banking app. "Alex, darling, would you like to tell them, or should I?" Alex grinned. He'd been waiting for this moment since we met. "By all means, love. I think it's time." I turned my phone around, displaying the banking statement that had made Victoria's wine-drinking hands tremble. "As of this morning, my personal net worth is just over $3 billion. That's not counting the company's value or real estate holdings." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's wine glass slipped from her fingers, spreading an expensive Bordeaux across the pristine tablecloth. That's impossible," she whispered. "Not impossible," Alex said proudly, "just carefully hidden. Did you really think I married Bella without knowing exactly who she was?" But, Victoria looked frantically around the table, as if seeking support from the equally stunned family members. "If this is true, why didn't you say anything? Why let us think?" "Let you think I was a gold digger?" I finished for her. "Because I wanted to see who you really were. All of you. How you'd treat someone you thought was beneath you." Richard had gone very pale, no doubt remembering all the condescending financial advice he'd tried to give me over the past 2 years. "The prenup you're so worried about?" I continued. "Alex insisted on one, to protect me from any claims on my company, though he didn't really need to. The family lawyers made sure of that." "Family lawyers?" Victoria's voice had risen an octave. "What family? You said you were an only child, that your parents had passed." "They did," I confirmed, "but the Chin family isn't without resources, or connections." In fact, I checked my phone again, enjoying this moment perhaps more than I should. "We just acquired controlling interest in Ashworth Industries' main competitor." That bombshell hit Richard hard. He actually grabbed the table for support. "Anderson Tech? That was you?" "Through a series of shell companies, yes. I thought it might come in handy if your family's attitudes didn't improve." Alex was trying not to laugh now, We'd planned this revelation carefully, though we'd expected to wait until Christmas, but Victoria's latest attack had accelerated the timeline. Would anyone like to see the company portfolio? I offered innocently, or perhaps the real estate holdings? I believe we just acquired that building on Beacon Street that the Ashworth Foundation was hoping to buy. Victoria's face had progressed through several interesting colors, finally settling on a sort of grayish-white. All this time, you've been watching. I finished for her, learning exactly what kind of family I married into, and making contingency plans. Contingency plans? Richard found his voice. What does that mean? It means, Alex answered, that Bella's company now controls enough of your competitors to make things very difficult for Ashworth Industries, if necessary. The implications of that statement rippled around the table. The Ashworth fortune, while old, was heavily dependent on their company's continued success, a fact that everyone present was suddenly, painfully aware of. But we're family, Victoria protested weakly. Are we? I asked quietly. You've spent 2 years telling me I'm not worthy of your name, that I'm common, beneath you. At what point did you consider me family? The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle clearing of a throat. Harrison, the family's ancient butler, appeared at my elbow with a fresh glass of water. Pardon the interruption, Mrs. Ashworth, he said, emphasizing my married name slightly, but there's a call for you from Hong Kong. Something about the merger? I smiled at Harrison, who, I suspected, had known exactly who I was all along. Nothing escaped his notice in this house. Thank you, Harrison. Please tell Mr. Wong I'll call him back shortly. We're just having a little family discussion about Worth. Victoria flinched at the word. Around the table, various aunts, uncles, and cousins were frantically Googling my name on their phones, no doubt finding the carefully curated public information about my company and assets. Oh my God, Cousin Margaret breathed. She's on the Forbes list. Has been for years. Top 50, Alex confirmed proudly, though she prefers to keep a low profile, usually. But your clothes, Victoria sputtered, gesturing at my simple dress. Your car, your lifestyle, what about them? I asked. Did you expect me to dress like a cartoon billionaire, flash my wealth around? Some of us prefer to be judged by who we are, not what we own. The irony of that statement, given the current situation, wasn't lost on me. Which is exactly why I fell in love with her, Alex added, while you were all focusing on her background, trying to find ways to exclude her. I was getting to know a brilliant, compassionate woman who cares more about innovation and progress than social status. Victoria turned to her son, betrayal written across her features. You knew? All this time, you let us make fools of ourselves? You did that quite well on your own, Mother, Alex replied coldly. Every snide comment, every social slight, every attempt to make Bella feel unwelcome, that was all you. Richard was still processing the business implications. Anderson Tech, the merger, that means you now control about 40% of your market, I confirmed, though that could change, depending on how things go from here. Are you threatening us? Victoria's shock was turning to anger. Not at all. I'm offering you a choice. We can move forward as a real family, putting the past behind us, or we can maintain our current relationship, both personal and professional. It's entirely up to you. That's blackmail. No, Mother, Alex interrupted. That's business, something our family claims to understand so well. I stood up, smoothing my common dress. I should take that call from Hong Kong, but before I do, let me be clear, I don't want or need your money, your social position, or your approval. I've been testing you, all of you, watching to see if there was any substance behind the Ashworth name you're so proud of. And? Richard asked quietly. And I'm disappointed, but not surprised. Fortunately for you, Alex takes after his grandmother, the one who built Ashworth Industries from nothing, while the rest of you were busy attending cocktail parties. That hit home. Alexandra Ashworth, Richard's mother, had indeed built the company, though the family preferred to focus on their older, less commercial history. Think about it, I continued. Take some time to decide what matters more, your social pretensions or your family's future. I'll be in my study when you're ready to talk. Harrison knows where to find me. As I left the dining room, I heard Victoria's shaking voice. Harrison, did you know about this? Madam, the butler replied with perfect dignity. I make it my business to know everything about the family I serve, including the fact that Mrs. Isabella's personal charitable foundation just endowed a wing at Boston Children's Hospital, in your name. I smiled as I climbed the stairs to my study. Harrison really did know everything. The next few hours brought a parade of Ashworth family members to my door, each trying to process this shift in the family dynamic. Cousin Margaret wanted to discuss tech startups. Uncle George had questions about international markets. Even Victoria's sister Eleanor admitted she'd always admired my quiet confidence. Finally, well past midnight, Victoria herself appeared. She looked older somehow, her social armor cracked. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why let us treat you that way when you could have?" "Could have what? Bought your respect? Proven my worth with a bank statement? That's not respect, Victoria, that's transaction." She sat heavily in one of the leather chairs. "We've been horrible to you." "Yes," I agreed, "you have. And now you control our company's future." "Your company's future was already in trouble," I pointed out. "Your competitors are more innovative, more adaptive. That's why they were vulnerable to acquisition. Would you be willing to help? Not for my sake, but for the employees, the people who depend on Ashworth Industries?" It was the first time I'd ever heard Victoria express concern for someone outside her social circle. "Progress, of sorts." "That depends," I replied. "Are you willing to accept that the world has changed? That breeding and social status mean less than innovation and hard work? Do I have a choice?" "There's always a choice, Victoria. You can adapt and grow, or you can cling to the past and fade away, just like your company." She was quiet for a long moment. "The hospital wing, why?" "Because that's what real power is for. Not for making others feel small, but for making the world a little better." "Will you teach me?" The question seemed to surprise her as much as me. "About the company, about business today? If I'm willing to learn?" I studied her carefully. "Are you willing to learn about more than just business? About family? About worth that isn't measured in dollars or social status?" I want to try, for Alex's sake, if nothing else." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a start. "Then yes, I'll teach you. We can start tomorrow, if you'd like." After she left, Alex found me still in the study. "That went well," he observed, settling onto the couch beside me. "Better than expected," I agreed, "though your mother may have an ulterior motive, saving the company." "Does it matter? She's willing to learn. That's more than I ever expected." He was right. Of course, change had to start somewhere, even if that somewhere was self-interest. Over the next few months, Victoria surprised everyone by throwing herself into learning about modern business practices. She even started attending technology conferences, dragging a reluctant Richard along. The annual Christmas party that year was notably different. Instead of social posturing, the conversation centered on innovation, technology, and yes, even charitable giving. Victoria had discovered she had a talent for fundraising, once she redirected her social energy toward actual causes. "I owe you an apology," she told me at the party. "Several apologies, actually." "Keep the apologies," I suggested. "Focus on doing better." And surprisingly, she did. The Ashworth name began to mean something different in Boston society, not just old money and social status, but innovation and social responsibility. As for me, I kept my simple dresses and quiet ways, though now everyone knew exactly who and what I was. But the real victory wasn't in revealing my wealth or power, it was in watching a family transform, albeit reluctantly, from social snobs to actual contributors to society. The next generation of Ashworths would grow up understanding that true worth isn't about names or breeding or bank accounts, though having a 9-figure balance certainly helped make that point. It's about what you do with what you have, whether that's money, power, or simply the courage to be yourself in the face of prejudice. And Victoria? She finally learned that lesson too, though it took a significant shock to her system to get there. Sometimes the best way to teach worth is to show just how worthless old prejudices can be. The end.